All right, so if you are not under a rock or not part of FGC Twitter, you don't know what's going on right now, a certain discussion has come up, and I think it's really interesting to talk about. And the funny thing is it all stems from this one clip. So let's just go ahead and take a look at the clip, and then we'll go ahead and talk about its implications.
You're gonna overextend. I'm not though. Who does that?
This is just the perfect clip. Let's break down why this clip is just so entertaining, first of all.
You're gonna overextend. I'm not though.
You're gonna overextend. I'm not though. And then
Who does that?
the overextension comes right on cue with the dramatic climax of the music, and then those fateful words, who does that? Indeed, who does that? Well, I gotta tell you, it's Titan Zaraki who does that. The raw tatsu and the tense round-ending moments with 20 seconds left on the clock. When it's time to come clutch, he throws out the raw EX tatsu, it clips Phenom doing who knows what, and he gets the W for that round. Now, before we go any further, chat, I have a question for you. Was that a read? Or was that random? 1 for read, 2 for random in the chat. I'm actually surprised how evenly split this is. Look at that. Random. Chat has decided he's random by a margin of 14 votes. So this was contentious even within the dumpster community. However, let me present you with the next scenario.
Really try a few gutsy things with that lead he's got by being in winner's bracket. And we're off.
Great reaction, there you go.
Oh. Oh.
Walk into the neutral jump again.
So context, this is grand finals of DreamHack Winter 13, GamerB versus Daigo, 2 extremely high-level players in the Street Fighter 4 era, 2 of the best to ever do it, especially in this game. And it's the first round of the grand final set with Daigo in winner's bracket. So I present to you the same exact question. Was it a read or was it random? Daigo is a nut? Maybe. Looks like the chat has spoken. You guys have decided that this sequence of Daigo doing several unsafe uppercuts on GamerB's Wake Up is a read and not random. Why is it a read in this case? And why did you guys mostly consider it random in the case of our dear friend Titan playing against a high-level player Phenom online? Why is that random, and why is Daigo's instance reads? They're both incredibly unsafe options, aren't they? If you don't know what happened, when this tweet got a lot of traction, the discussion that came around it was just very emotionally charged. It's very difficult to take any interaction in a vacuum and then qualify it as good or bad, as smart or dumb, the right call or the wrong call, or it just happened to work. There's a lot of players in the community who feel that there's unequal treatment with players. Zara Wolf here goes, part of the problem of the FGC is right here. That prediction was godlike. Of course, we won't give the diamond players props for the clutch hit. We'll flag them as random. Those players get discouraged and leave. Then we wonder why our scene stagnates. Wake up, FGC. And this is something that I've heard for years. It's something I've dealt with myself. Like, there's a bit of truth in both. There's a bit of truth in the players who are ragging on him for going for this option, and there's also a hint of truth to players not getting credit based on their credentials. Meritocracy of the FGC, right? That's what I wanted to talk about. What makes something a read versus what makes something random? Has a lot of parts and not all of them are all in the game. You know what time it is? It's time to bust out the notepad. How can we determine if something is a read versus something being random? Here's number 1 for me. Risk versus reward. Can we break down what that was for the clip with the Kage player? If you think about what the Kage player was doing, it's round 1 of this set. There's 20 seconds left on the clock. He has a life deficit. He's 1 hit away from dying. Any random poke, any random jab will kill him. Phenom is like 1 small combo away from death. Any confirmed to like a tatsu and EX upper will kill him, but he has to get a hit. Right? He can't just poke him with a jab. He has to get a hit. So what is the risk reward of him deciding to slowly walk up and EX Tatsu in Phenom's grill? Let's break that down. Okay? The risk. If blocked, you're dead. Reward. If it hits, you win. Kind of a 50-50 here. Just risk reward here is not really enough to understand this, right? In this situation, he's so low health. You can't just look at these two options, because I could say any move in the game. Almost any move in the game I could say this in this situation. But here it just sounds like a 50-50, so why not? So I think we need more attributes to be able to really define this. Okay, so what about likelihood of succeeding, failing? I think this is the key component in this situation. How likely is this going to work? What if instead fishing for crouching medium kick confirmed? What about a dash frame trap? What about a jump? You know, any one of these options. How likely are they to succeed versus fail? Likelihood of a random mid connecting. It's not unheard of. If I had to put a value on it, I would say like 30% to 70%. This is just a guess. It's a fast move. It has to catch him walking around. Phenom was walking around, right? He wasn't holding down back the whole time, and then he just did it. Fishing for crouching medium kick confirmed. Well, this kind of depends too. It depends on your footsies. This is something that you can actively improve at. You're also fighting Karen. Karen has great footsies, so against Karen especially, it's not, I would say, not great with Kage's types of normals. Dash frame trap, jump, same idea. Are you getting him to look at other options in neutral? Are you getting him to distract his attention to other things? So there's a lot of elements here where you can start controlling for these options, I would say. This one is relatively safe though. These two are unsafe. They have risk as well. With one hit away, a random jab check will beat either of these, or an anti-air would beat this. They all have risk of you dying, but you have more ways to increase the likelihood of these things working. Your spacing, your walk patterns allow you to try to fish for these sorts of things without immediately committing to a 100% result failure. If these options don't work, it's not guaranteed that you're going to lose. If he blocks your jump, that's still better than you just being in neutral, right? If you force him to block your jump, that's a win, even if it doesn't get the hit. If you force him to block your dash frame trap, you can now start applying pressure and mix up with throws. That's a win. If you fish for crouching medium kick and you poke him around, but he doesn't actually get hit, you're not immediately dead. This one, as soon as you go for the option, you are winning or losing immediately. You're putting your cards on the table. So the likelihood of succeeding might be as likely as any of these, but the risk is actually higher. You're immediately putting your life on the line for this option, right? You have no other choice here. You're dead. These are sort of the factors that you need to consider. Were these thought processes going through your head of deciding what options you could use? I think what also matters a lot is context. The interaction itself is meaningless without context. Let's review the context of what we just saw. This is round one of an online ranked set. The game will not end if your read fails. I would say the stakes are extremely low. Maybe the stakes of the interaction for that round are high, you're gonna lose, but the stakes overall, if you lose an online set, it doesn't matter. Now, let's go here. Context. Daigo is in grand finals, winner's side of an extremely difficult tournament, facing one of the best players in the world, and goes for this ridiculous sequence where if any of those DPs on block would lead to him getting hurt, it's a different context. Daigo has the ability to establish a mind game that can help him out throughout the rest of the set. He has up to 5 games to lose before he has to win the rest of the games, right? He can dissuade Gamer B from relying on certain options. Hey, on wake up, stop crouch checking. If you don't know what's going on, he's doing the DP meaty to beat delay crouch tech. So it's basically saying to Gamer B that, hey, I'm crazy enough to do these sorts of things on your wake up, which means you're gonna have to block. And once you start blocking, I can start throwing you more often. Daigo has a set to lose, he's in winners, and he just shook Gamer B's confidence to the core right out of the gate, and Gamer B knows he has a huge road ahead of him. There's a long-term game plan that can be established from this. There's a lot of context here that can help you see where this is going. So I think context really matters. Are you gonna be doing these sorts of things when it's grand finals of a CPT Premier event and there's thousands of dollars on the line? Are you just going to immediately flip a coin in neutral and hope it works out? Or are you going to go for an option where you have more variables that you can control in your favor? For example, are you going to try to go for low forward confirms? Are you going to try to space out your standing fierce punch? Are you going to try to use a different tool instead, where maybe you don't immediately win right then, but you have more likelihood of manipulating the spacing, the pacing of the match in order to achieve success? It's a little easy to just kind of just do whatever in a ranked match where it doesn't matter. So context, that matters, right? What are the stakes? Also, what other options were available? This one is huge to me, and this is one of the biggest points that I think defines random versus reads. In order to achieve this dub, the Kage player had many other options besides one that might result in him immediately losing, right? He could have instead tried to play the footsie game, try to go for low forwards, try to do anything. The EX Tatsu itself doesn't offer any unique advantages over other moves in this scenario besides somewhat going over lows. However, at this spacing, if he just uses like a stand fierce or a crouching medium kick at the right timing, that can also beat moves by just beating them on the startup, and you can hit confirm them into damage. It does advance forward, the Tatsu does advance forward, but he's close enough to use his other buttons. Forward fierce or crouching medium kick would work at this range. So in this context, if your goal is to hit him for trying to not block in this spacing or to move forward or to press a button, would you choose to try to confirm a low forward? Would you choose to do a standing fierce punch, which you can maybe get a crush counter or confirm it to the target combo? Or would you just Tatsu? I don't think many of you would do EX Tatsu because there's other moves that cover the majority of the utility to get you the dub. That context implies that this option is kind of random, because why wouldn't you do a different tool that might accomplish most of those goals anyways, which are safer? On the other hand, Daigo versus GamerB again. What is Daigo actually doing here, right? He's not just putting damage on the board, so he anti-airs. He anti-airs. Meaty DP or delay frame trap DP, frame trap DP. What is he doing there? The anti-airs are obvious, he's anti-airing, but once he gets him knocked down and he does the meaty DPs, the goal of this is to stop him from doing anything besides blocking or maybe backdash. Backdash might work here as well. It's an invincible move that will beat delay jab or crouch tech, which is options that people mix up their timings with in order to beat your throw pressure. In Street Fighter 4, the metagame was to do different delays on your crouch tech so that you could block their pressure but still tech throws. This option blows through that. It blows through that at the risk of, if they actually just commit to blocking, you're going to get hit and it's going to hurt. But this blows up anything to do with that mind game of, oh, what is my tech timing going to be? Obliterates it. There is no other move in this game that has that utility. To get this reward, there's nothing you can really do that accomplishes the same thing. This move has a very focused purpose that no other moves could replace it to do the same thing safer. So the move choice makes sense. It's not a random move. The move choice for EX Tatsu, there's so many other moves that could potentially do very similar things for so much less risk that the Tatsu itself seems random. So what other options are available in this context? Very important to consider for if it's a read or random. And here's the part that's gonna make people upset. And this is kind of the core of the arguments and the discussion here on Twitter is meritocracy. It's not the happy truth that you want to hear, it's the sad reality. We sort of base our opinions on what people's past history has established for us. Daigo has established himself to be a consistent, high-level player. He's established himself to be like the best. So when Daigo does something, people pay attention. They go, oh yeah, Daigo did that. It must be the smartest thing to do. And when someone who's less qualified, less known, does something very similar, then he gets called random. And that's what people are talking about. If Daigo does the Ume Shoryu, it's a brilliant play, it's genius. But if someone else does a bunch of DPs and ranked, it's random. I think the problem is most people don't consider these other factors before coming to that conclusion. The reason Daigo is who he is because he understands these things extremely well when it comes to picking options. You are gambling, you are taking risks, but they're not random because there's a reason behind them. You can't just look at the same input without the same context and say it's the same thing. Unfortunately, I think that there is an element of meritocracy. How consistent does your read work? If your reads aren't working very consistently, you're probably not doing too hot and you're gonna lack the credentials, and people might not take what you do that serious. That's the reality of it. If you play with an extremely risk-filled style and you get blown up for it 50% of the time, but the other 50% you have the highlight reel, people aren't really going to listen to your bets because winning 50% of the time in a fighting game is awful. It is not good. If you only win 50% of the time, you might as well go flip coins, right? That's not the point of playing fighting games. The point of playing fighting games is to try to win as consistently as possible. So unfortunately, I think there's a bit of meritocracy here, and that's what gets people heated. And it's a common thing about, if a Japanese player does something in some situation, it's godlike, but if an American player does it, it's random. I think it's due to us not being able to read these variables very well. We are human. It's hard for us to get all the full picture, to understand everything. We have a hard time understanding these things. I think there's a super sick comic that actually Spaceboy brought up today. He said the Kage Tatsu conversation reminded me of this comic. Look at health and rounds too, not just a super hitting or being blocked. High level tech. I still can't believe I'm watching Momochi play in real life. I know, me neither. I wonder what high level tech he's going to pull off this time. Walk versus Guile. Sonic, and then boom. Walk up super. Ooh, did you see that? Walk up into raw super, what a god. A few moments later, walk, raw super. No sonic boom, block. Wow, he thought that would work. What a scrub. This pretty much boils down the whole discussion. The context of this move is completely different in this scenario with Momochi and in this scenario with our poor player here who got his walk up super blocked. Momochi is in the lead and up around. He's walking. He waits to react to a certain option. He sees the start of the sonic boom, and then he does the super. Our poor player here is trying to do monkey see, monkey do without accounting for all the other context that Momochi was thinking about when going for this read. In this instance, he's down around. He has barely any health left, and he just walk up super, and this dude's like, what? And then he just punishes him for his troubles. The same series of inputs, but with two very different contexts and outcomes. So I thought that was interesting that Spaceboy brought that up. You got to pay attention to what people are doing. This is random. He doesn't know why he's doing the option. He didn't get the other variables. He just thought, walk up super. It works for Momochi, it'll work for me. Momochi, obviously, is paying attention to a lot of the patterns that are going on here in order to make this read more successful. This is read versus random. This is it. There's too many variables you got to account for. And if you are just putting options in without fully understanding all the variables, and it's random. This is how it is. And I don't think there's any harm in calling that out. And I think that's where the big gripe that people have with this sort of discussion is that people don't want to discredit players. They don't want to berate them or make them feel bad for going for reads. At the end of the day, we're all gambling. We're all making reads. Some of them are good. Some of them are bad. Even bad reads sometimes land. And sometimes good players will make literal execution errors, but the audience will say that was so great. You have established yourself as a good player. Your literal mistake will be taken as being something great. Happens all the time. Likewise, sometimes you just do things. We're human. You just do things. If it works, cool. But ask yourself, can you repeat the success? It worked one time. Will it work the second time, the third time, the 100th time? That's what starts to differentiate a read versus random. How often can you repeat the success? We shouldn't be ragging on new players for being random though. It's okay. We're all random. Being unpredictable is good. I think that tatsu is random. If I had to vote, I'd say that's a random tatsu. Like Phenom said, who does that? It applies to the random tatsu in online ranked, and it applies to Daigo at the highest level. If it works, but you want it to work more than once. And that's the difference.